In this episode, we'll take a look at the Senal SCI-3212, which is a budget boom microphone for indoor dialogue, at least in the context we're looking at it, and we're going to look specifically at the super-cardioid polar pattern capsule. This entire episode is recorded with the Senal SCI-3212. It's boomed out of the frame just here, and it's recording into my Sound Devices MixPre 3 2 series recorder. We haven't done any sort of post-processing except to loudness normalized to minus 23 LUFS. This is a budget-level microphone, and what's kind of interesting about it is it comes with 3 different capsules. However, because we focus on filmmaking and recording dialogue in particular for filmmaking, we're going to focus on the super-cardioid capsule in this review. So if you're looking for a review with the other capsules, I'm sorry, don't want to waste your time, you're dismissed. Why am I reviewing this? One of the requests we get quite a bit is, can you review some more budget-oriented microphones? And so, that's what we're doing. This microphone is priced somewhere between $80 and $100 depending on when you buy it. Right now at B&H, when I looked this morning, and it is March 2020, it was priced at about $80, so it can also normally go up to $100, so it's somewhere in that range, which is definitely a budget boom microphone for recording dialogue for video and film. Now, I reviewed the Samson CO2 a couple of years ago, and it's a pretty decent option for someone who's looking for an XLR microphone on a budget, and in fact, you got 2 of them, so it would be great for interviews and things of that nature. But we wanted to also see if we could find another microphone in the same price range, and that's why we're looking at this one. Now, I don't have a Samson CO2 on hand. I borrowed that from B&H, just like I'm borrowing this from B&H to do this review. However, I'll put a link up here to the original CO2 review. You can pull that up in another tab and kind of play them back and forth if you want to get a sound comparison. First of all, let's get you a little sample so you can hear exactly what it sounds like directly out of the recorder without any sort of processing. Here's an audio sample. We are using the SCI-3212 here. I think that's what it's called. It is a kind of funny name. That is being recorded into a Sound Devices MixPre 3 2. And then in this space where we're recording here, I have it, well, you can see it, it's just boomed above me right here like you typically would do for a dialogue shot in a film. And of course it would be out of frame. You'd put the frame line right up in here. I have to my left and right sound blankets hanging. I have another one hanging just off to one side of the camera right here. I've got a rug underneath me, a blanket down on the floor behind me, otherwise concrete floors and a concrete wall behind me. Ceiling is plastic sheathing over insulated space. So just so you get a sense for what this space looks like and acoustically what you might expect here. So let's give a few moments of silence here and see how it sounds. Now, one thing I like to take a look at is the self-noise generated by the microphone. And in this case, what we did is we did a recording where we set the gain to 45 dB on the MixPre 2. And then what we did is I spoke for a while, then I left some silence, and then what I did in post is normalize the audio for that entire clip up to minus 23 LUFS, and then measured the RMS level of the silent section. And that is our practical noise floor. Now, in this space, when I did the test, I had one fan going and the light that's on the backdrop here, but nothing else. Everything else was turned off. We're in a pretty quiet basement here. So it's not a self-noise test in the purest sense, but it is a practical noise test. So what we found is that we got a pretty respectable performance out of this microphone here. It sat at minus 65 decibels when we normalized to minus 23 LUFS in post. And that's respectable, I think, for a microphone this inexpensive. Let's talk a little bit about its polar pattern. Polar pattern is where the microphone is sensitive and where it is not sensitive. In other words, where it's going to reject ambient sound. And with a super-cardioid polar pattern, what you're going to do is you're going to find that the microphone will pick up on the front in a fairly narrow pattern, then it will drop off pretty dramatically on the side, and then it will pick up a little bit in the back as well. Let's go ahead and give you a couple of samples, first of all with me speaking, and second of all with white noise generator, and you can see how much of a difference there is. Here I'm speaking directly on axis to the microphone, that is I'm speaking directly into the front at 0 degrees. Now we'll turn the microphone off a little bit here. So now we are at 90 degrees, so I'm speaking to the side of the microphone. and I'll continue to turn it, and now we are at 180 degrees, so I'm speaking into the back of the microphone. Go ahead and turn it back. Now we are back at 90 degrees right here, and we'll slowly turn it till we come back on axis, and we're getting closer, closer, closer. Now we are back on axis at 0 degrees. What we found is that at the back of the mic, 180 degrees off axis, the sound level was picked up at minus 10 dB from the front of the mic, so there's a 10 decibel difference between the front and the back of the mic, but there's a minus 21 dB difference between the front of the mic and the side of the mic, which is pretty impressive, and that's not atypical of a super-cardioid microphone, but I think it's a really good polar pattern for using indoors when you're recording dialogue. Now, part of that overall sample there was also to illustrate the off-axis coloration of the microphone. What happens to sounds that are not coming in the front of the mic? Do they sound natural? And the answer is no, not entirely. This mic does have some coloration, and this is not unexpected at this price level. Is it a big issue? Not necessarily. Again, if you're operating in a case where you need to keep the budget for the microphone at about $100, I think this is a pretty good way to go. Is there going to be some off-axis coloration of the noise? Yes, but is your audience going to notice it? Probably not. Are you going to win an Academy Award with this mic? Probably not. We also did some testing to see how immune the microphone is to radio frequency interference. That's any sort of wireless activity. The only way we were able to get it to make any noise was to put the mobile phone right next to the microphone, and even then it was relatively minor, so I'm not too concerned about it in this particular case. It does have a nice metal body. I'm not sure what the metal is. I don't know if it's brass or something else, but it didn't seem to have a major problem whenever we had the phone at a reasonable distance. So for example, here it's been sitting on my lap with the radios on, and we haven't had any issues. Another thing to consider when you're looking at a boom microphone is if you are going to be hand booming it, how much handling noise does it pick up? And what we found is that with the included shock mount, which is kind of an old school shock mount with the rubber bands that hold the microphone in a tube, and we found that it did fine. It did a fine job. What we did pick up was a little bit of air noise moving past the capsule as we quickly cued the microphone back and forth, but other than that, it did really well. So even the included shock mount does a nice job. Now, what are my impressions comparing this microphone to the Samson CO2? My sense is that this microphone sounds a little bit warmer, and it also sounds a little bit more articulate at the top end than the Samson CO2. The Samson CO2 has this kind of mid-range nasally sound to it. This doesn't seem to have so much of that, but it does tend to be a little bit harsh in the sibilant frequencies. So when I say the letter S or the letter C, you get this kind of sizzling sound. It's picking it up a little bit heavily for my personal taste, for my voice at least. That's not going to be the case on all voices, but it is something to consider. For this price range, it's pretty nice voicing. I think I definitely prefer the sound of this to the Samson CO2. Now, just to round out what people might consider cons, I don't know if it's really a con, but number one, it doesn't have any sort of high-pass filter or a pad to reduce the overall input level. You're going to have to handle all that with your recorder. Not a big deal in most cases. And then secondly, it doesn't come with any sort of storage case. They really invested everything in the microphone itself and the additional capsules that come with it, the shock mount and the foam cover, and you basically get a box, a cardboard box with a little foam insert. So is that a huge deal? Probably not, but you are going to have to come up with somewhere to store it. So there's a look at an affordable boom microphone for indoor dialogue recording. Hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.